May is actually a holiday for a lot of us in the mental health world. It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
And we are so excited on this episode. You do not want to miss it. We have a licensed clinician, Caleb, that's going to join us to talk about the ins and outs of mental health. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why Are You Worried About It? I'm Lindsay Bush. I'm the HR director with Country Crossroads.
And hi, everybody. I'm Susie Arbo. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And Lindsay, we are super excited about today because it's May. It's kind of like a holiday for if you're in the mental health field. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we have a very special guest joining us. So, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Caleb Blaze. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been here with Country Crossroads for about 9 months now at this point. So excited to be here, talk about mental health.
Yes, we love Caleb. We're so excited you're here. We love having guests. Caleb, it's just so awesome to have you here. I know everybody out there loves hearing different perspectives and stuff. And I mean, me and Susie obviously haven't mastered, so everybody just keeps coming back to hear it all. But we love having like guests here and being able to share different aspects of it. So I'm so excited you're here.
Yeah, for sure we are. And this podcast is really special because it's called Why You Worried About It. So we cover so many things that maybe you should worry about, but then we also talk about things that people worry about that, they maybe shouldn't. It's out of their circle of control. It's something that, is they have zero, say so in how it goes. And so we just kind of talk through some of those things. And today we really wanted to focus in on mental health. And we thought, what not a better way to do it than bring in one of our amazing clinicians who has helped so many. And Caleb, you've been in the field now, working, different positions throughout your years, coming on now, kind of with private practice and whatnot. What would you say are some of the top things that when people, come on your schedule and they come in for therapy, like what are some of the top issues that's happening for people?
So for me, anxiety is the number one thing that I see. Anxiety, depression, both in there. I think anxiety a little bit more so. Um, I think most people I see have some level of anxiety about something in their lives. A lot of trauma is one that I see quite a bit as well, and that of course causes a lot of that anxiety, depression that we do see.
Yeah, yeah. And Caleb, what I've noticed too is that kids, as far as just they keep getting younger and younger, and they know the word anxiety. And I remember when I was a child, like I had no idea even what that word was. Like I would maybe use a feeling like worried, you know what I mean, or like nervous or scared or
Or
something like
a lot
that.
of them,
And
my stomach hurts,
Mm-hmm.
for no
My
discernible
kids did
reason.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have kids that come in, they're like, yeah, I'm feeling anxious. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you deal with that? They're like, I do some deep breathing. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, like we're not starting from square one. Like you've already got a little bit of a
Yes.
leg up on this at, very young ages.
I was going to ask you
absolutely.
guys, what do you think about I hear people say things all the time, like, and it's usually different generations, and I can go on about different generations and how they feel about different things too, right? Like, if you're raised a little bit older, a lot of times it's suck it up, that mentality or whatever. But we're getting it out there. So, those buzzwords, like people want to say, oh, my kid wouldn't even think about suicide if you weren't talking about it, or my kid wouldn't even know they have anxiety if you weren't, telling them. Like, I hear people say those kind of things all the time, like, we're planting it in their brains, which I know how I feel, but what do you guys like? What do you think about that? Like, how do you combat that when people say those kind of things?
I think there's some interesting dynamics with maybe some of the older generations where I've heard them be like, well, I've never felt anxious before in my life. And like, we'll t- I'm like, we'll talk about different scenarios and, things like, in school when you had to, wait to get up in front of the class and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach, that
Mhm.
shaky feeling. And they're like, oh yeah, I felt that. I'm like, well, that's what anxiety is. That's what it feels like. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm like, yeah, people with anxiety disorders, they're feeling that all the time. That's their life, their day to day. And it kind of gets a little more understanding there.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it is interesting because you do hear different generations, you know what I mean? Like, generations before us, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s people, I mean, for some whatever reason, some people acknowledge it and understand mental health, that kind of thing. But there are a lot of people walking around that are kind of that mentality of shove it under the rug, we're fine. I don't experience that, or I'm going to avoid it or ignore it, even though that feeling is there for them. And then we do see our younger generations, and I know people do say, "Oh, we're planting that seed for them," right? We're like, they see these TikTok videos, they see on social media that people are, anxious, or there's these reels going on and whatnot. And I always think that actually what we're doing is we are bringing awareness, right? Like we are showing people like what it feels like, what are symptoms in our body. Now, do people throw around labels and diagnose themselves? All the time, right? Like, oh, my partner has borderline personality disorder, or oh, my partner is a narcissist, right? Or they always kind of like use these things where they diagnose. And I always just tell people, please don't diagnose yourself. Please see a licensed clinician, and make sure that because there's a lot of criteria boxes that you need to check to actually have that full-fledged diagnosis. But you brought up the word suicide, and obviously that's something that's very, very passionate, near dear to my heart, as far as just helping people understand what that is, like what those thoughts are, and then what you can do about them. That they are so treatable, you know what I mean, and that there are things that we can do to help intervene and to help teach people coping skills and stuff. So to answer your questions, in my opinion, I don't think that we're like making people feel a certain way because we're saying these words.
Yeah.
I think if anything, we're identifying what these things are. So,
Yeah.
Caleb, I have a question for you. In your opinion, as a clinician, what are some of the symptoms that when somebody has anxiety when they come into your office, like what are some of the physical and mental symptoms that they experience?
I definitely, there's certain things I can tell, if someone's, maybe a little more jittery, or we can, you kind of notice that they're, kind of pausing to like try to take a deep breath. Um, if they're talking a little bit faster than normal, you can kind of see that. It's, and it does present differently for everyone, of course, but there's some ways you can kind of tell. And sometimes, if I can tell that the anxiety is getting kind of high, I'm like, hey, do we need to pivot a little bit? Do we need to, take a second to do some deep breaths? Kind of take a pause and come back to it.
Mhm. For sure, for sure. And if you're sitting out there and you're wondering about kind of your anxiety levels, if you kind of have like those like racing thoughts, right, where they just kind of go, and then they can spiral downward and kind of go to like worst case scenario, those are some symptoms of, anxiety. And if even some physical stuff, like people's, like Caleb, you mentioned like a tummy ache or stomach ache, that kind of thing. Even just like
Yeah.
anxiety can present in like a racing heart rate. Do you know what I mean? Like where your heart just feels like it's just going to town and racing, that kind of thing. Or like you talked about shortness of breath. Caleb, I don't know about you, but I've had people that have been a referral from a doctor's office or an ER that they went in with like chest pains. And then when they got checked out, because, whatever from their doctor, the doctor's like, I think that this is more, of a mental health anxiety type of concern. So those kind of things are definitely symptoms as well as anxiety. And then, you mentioned depression. We do see a lot of people come in, especially to Country Crossroads, with depression. As far as that goes, what else? And you mentioned trauma, Caleb. And what are some other things that you see as far as mental health?
Grief is one that I do see quite a bit. People lose somebody very important to them, and they, it causes changes in mood, extreme feelings. A lot of people don't know how to handle that, especially if it's, a really significant person in their life, or they've never dealt with grief before, and so they don't know where to put all these feelings and how to deal with them. And so that's one that I do see a lot as well. And I do see a good amount of relationship difficulties. People who are trying to communicate, trying to get along, and they're hitting a wall, and they don't know how to break through that wall. I see that one quite a bit as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Those are kind of, I feel like, hot concerns right now. I also see a lot of people just in general, just with stress, like really high stress levels, and they're kind of feeling overwhelmed with life, or like kind of almost like stuck or whatnot. We hear this term thrown out all the time, burnout. I'm so
Yes.
burnt out. I'm so burnt out and whatever. And you know, I'm a big advocate of if you are feeling burnt out, I'm so glad that you are aware of that in your body and you know how that feels and whatnot. Now, what are we going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, what are some steps that we're going to take because there are things that you can do for burnout. And
And I
so,
think,
yeah.
oh, I think a lot of that is not how to treat that in the moment. It's building a plan so that we hopefully don't get to that point again. You know, trying not to focus on just the here and now, trying to focus on the future, on the whole person. So, you know, building self-care plans to avoid burnout, to get in those habits so that, you know, when they leave our office for the last time that they've got the skills they need for in the future.
Mhm.
I also, it kind of makes me think too, and I know that we talk about that and I love it. Like, we talk about it a lot whenever you feel that kind of way, like you're burnt out. Okay, that's fine. It's valid, but what are we doing about it? I almost like when we were talking about that earlier, talking about anxiety or depression and all of those other things, and talking about people like self-diagnosing themselves or saying, oh, well, it's fine. I'm just anxious. I'm an anxious person. I always have been. I almost feel like, again, like, can't we say, okay, that's valid, but what are we doing about it? You know, even with those things too, like I feel like we can say that, yeah, like I know I'm anxious and depressed, or I have been, you know, throughout my life, but I feel like I'm challenging myself. You know, I take medication, I have been through therapy, I do different things. So, like, it's not like something like, yeah, I'm prone to be anxious, but I'm trying to do things to make myself better about it, I guess. Like, I feel like that way with the burnout, I feel like we could say that about anything. Like, are we doing something about it, or are you just labeling yourself and calling it good? Like, I'm depressed. I'm just gonna live this way. Like, I don't know. I feel like people recognizing it and then choosing to do something about it is the next step for sure.
I think definitely our words have power. You know,
Mhm.
if you're saying, "Oh, I'm just an anxious person. That's how I am," instead, you know, hey, I manage anxiety day to day.
Mhm.
You know, there's a huge difference in that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Caleb, I love that you just said that. And Lindsay, I thank you for sharing that because that's, I mean, that's so true. You know, what are you doing? I get really excited talking about the human brain and when we talk about what's something called neuroplasticity is where we really learn to rewire our thinking. And you can do that through therapy, which is so cool. As far as just learning different thought patterns and different skills that can help you think differently about things. And, you know, you think about anxiety and depression, those being thought-based disorders, right? And if we can really get in there and do some work to change the way we think about things can change the course of our life. So that's kind of really, really powerful. Caleb, I'm curious, in your opinion, who's a candidate for therapy? And Lindsay, you can jump in here too if you want.
Um, I think realistically, anybody could be a candidate for therapy at any point in their life. There's never going to be a person that doesn't go through something difficult, and I think people tend to want to try to deal with it on their own. And it's like, hey, there's outlets out here. There's ways to deal with it. I often talk with my clients about how like no one truly has it together. You know, we're all going through a new phase of life that we've never been through, and I think that anybody could benefit from that, whether it's from issues with anxiety, depression, or trauma, or just changes a phase of life. You know, I think about I'm in my 30s now. It's a different world than my 20s. You know, I've never been there before. So I'm navigating that. Same with somebody in their 40s or their 50s, you know, or coming into retirement. You know, they've never done that. And that can be a little bit jarring. So anybody at any phase of life can benefit.
Absolutely. And I
Mhm.
feel the same about that. And I also love to stress that people you don't get like this label. Like, just because you start doing self-help or therapy or those kind of things, that doesn't mean you're like a crazy psych patient that has to do
Mhm.
all these things. Like, it can be for a season, it can be for a short time. Maybe you're just going through something, a breakup that's hard, or a I don't know, maybe your kiddos are going through something and you're having a hard time being the best version to help them or something. Like, you can do it for short seasons. It doesn't mean that you've got that stamp or the scarlet letter for the rest of your life. And now you've got to carry that around. Like, it's okay to go, just get the help you need through work through something. And then you can always go back. It does not mean you have to start going every week, every 2 weeks, for the rest of your life. So don't be afraid of it.
Oh
No,
yeah, I've
no.
seen people that go one or two appointments to kind of get some
Sneak thoughts.
perspective and get some things out, and then they're done.
Hmm.
So it's different
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yep. It is.
Yep. And you guys kind of highlighted this, but everybody truly does have their own stuff. And it looks very different from the person maybe in their own home or walking down the street, the next person in line. But what we do, and it changes. And some seasons feel really good in life, and some seasons are super hard. And so
Mhm.
just knowing that there's healthy ways to deal with that, you're not alone. There's lots of different ways. Lindsay and I have talked on the show about getting help. If therapy's not for you, that's okay. There's podcasts, there's, workbooks you can order, there's books you can read, you can get a life coach. I mean, there's so many things you can do if therapy isn't for you. But I mean, obviously we
Yeah.
know the value in it. We see people get better every single day and their life changes for the better because of that therapeutic relationship and because of the tools that they learn. So, Caleb, we always like to close the show with a call to action.
Okay.
And so I am curious about what is one of your go-to favorite coping skills. You share yours and I will share one of mine.
Okay. For me, as far as I see a lot of anxiety, I like things like worry worksheets. You talked about kind of changing those thought patterns, getting all those anxious thoughts out on paper, out in the real world, and really rationalizing through them, learning how to change those thought patterns over time. I love those. I think those are very helpful in making long-term change for managing anxiety.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And anytime you can get it out, maybe you're not a talker, but maybe you are a pen to paper, you know what I mean, or whatever and stuff. And just sitting down and just having that outlet is healthy in itself, right? And so there's a lot of value in that. So I love that worry. And if you right now are at home and you're sitting there thinking, okay, I want to look this up, just go ahead and Google it or chat GPT. Hey, can you give me some type of exercise to do for my worries right now,
Mhm.
and whatnot. And if you ever want a therapist to walk you through one of those things, that's a really powerful thing. Lindsay, do you have a favorite coping skill you like?
I do. It's my favorite. You taught me, and I use it with my kids all the time. And I have to tell myself, changing your mindset. I love that Caleb said that. That's like I'm one of my next tattoos actually is going to be that. But because I know my mind is it controls everything. But telling my kids when things happen or if they say things and it's just not helpful. I know a lot of times we talk about it like in your brain, like when you're having those bad thoughts, that big stop sign out there. It's not helpful, and then change your or reframe it. I will literally tell my kids that often, like when they have something or they're upset about something, or my daughter doesn't want to go to practice, and I'm like, well, let's talk about it as how lucky we are to get to go to practice or things like that, and the more you tell yourself those kind of things, it really does start changing just the way your natural first response is. It's not as everything's not as gloom and doom sometimes the more you do it. I mean, it takes practice because
Mhm.
it's not something that's easy, it doesn't come natural, but it's really something that we've implemented, and I see it with my kids too. Like they'll pick up on me being like, "Oh, that's not helpful. That's not a helpful thing to think or say." So I love that one.
Mm-hmm. It's so good. It's so good. Oh, and kind of closing it out, one of my favorite coping skills is the circle of control, the good old circle of
Mhm.
control. If you've never done it before, look it up, Google it, do it. And really, what it is you draw a big circle on a piece of paper and you write in and out. And whatever in life is out of that circle are things that, like, a lot of times, like, we do focus on and then we have zero control over. And just when you notice yourself doing that, just gently bring your thoughts back into your own circle of things that you actually can control. So, like, what can I do about this current situation? And there usually are some steps and some things that give you a little bit of power back and that make you feel a little bit more like, okay, I do have a say so, and there's something that I can do right in this moment to feel a little bit better. And
Mhm.
so, if you think about that, we really do as humans have things that are in our control that we should be concerned about and worry about and
Yep.
do something about, right? We are the only ones that literally have a say so in our lives, and so making the best of it and treating our mental health and taking care of ourselves is completely up to us. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So, what a great show today, Caleb. You are a wealth of information, and we feel so lucky to get to work with you and do life with you and everything. And so, yeah, we're grateful for all of you guys listening today too, to be on this journey of life, and we're on it with you, trying to learn and grow as much as we can.
Yes. Thank you so much, Caleb, for being here. And if anybody else ever wants to be on the show, or you have something or a topic that you want to hear about, please reach out to us. We love hearing you, all the feedback from you guys. It always just, I don't know, it makes my heart so happy to know that even a share or a like on Facebook can go a long way, because it might touch somebody that you didn't even know needed it. So definitely check us out. Follow us on Facebook. It's Country Crossroads Counseling. And then our website is countrycrossroadscounseling.com.